This time, it's how to protect your classic bike from the ravages of winter time. Now before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Now whilst I do ride all year round, I don't tend to ride my classic bike all year round. This is particularly a problem in Britain because we tend to spray salt and all sorts of crap on the roads, and this is going to rot away our old bikes. And the way I figure it, they've earned their keep back in the 50s and 60s, so it would seem unfair to go riding them around in the winter time now that they've become, let's call them senior citizens. Well, for one thing, we've got to think about all this bright work, chrome and the paint work. What I tend to do with those is I tend to spray them with GT85 and just over winter, and this will tend to keep the rust at bay. Of course, you can't use those on the brakes because it's a lubricant. For things that are going to get hot like the engine, ACF A10 is a really good idea, and I tend to spray the engine and the exhaust and that. And then of course when summer comes I'll wash out. Also thinking about the chain's going to dry out and start to rust. It's a metal part, so it's quite vulnerable to rust, particularly in a damp garage or shed. So I tend to coat it in a good old coating of chain lube before I put it away. Now there are lots of different oils you can use for this. I'm not going to recommend any particular one. This is just a fairly homogeneous chain lube. Some people like to use gear oil. Anything to do really, it's just going to keep the rust at bay. Anything that's sort of water dispersed is ideal. On the left, British bikes in particular tend to wet sump. What this means is the oil drains out of there and into the bottom of the engine. So the first time you fire it up, at the end of winter you end up with a massive puddle of oil. Now some people will simply just drain all the oil out. Personally I like to leave some oil in there because I think it just helps to keep the rust away and stops any rusting going on inside the engine so it doesn't dry out. Okay, one solution for wet sumping is to fit an anti-sump valve, which I've fitted just in there, and then you can see that very well. I have found that these work to a limited extent. The problem is, if you leave it for a long time, then actually it will drain out and they don't work effectively, and you'll still get the same wet sumping problems. Some advice I read in a bike magazine a few years ago, which I think I do and I think it works really well. Basically undo the plump sub and leave it loose. Stick a jug underneath and just let the oil run through. It's going to wet some, so let it get on with it and fall into things. There's a little bit of oil already dropped into the jug there. Catch it in a jug. If it's summertime, you can put that oil back in again and reuse it. For winter, we'll just let it fall through the engine. Because it's vitally important then that you remember to do that nut up before you go out for a ride, or you're going to have an engine with no oil in it. So what I do is I keep a spanner right in front of the bike at all times, a spanner that undoes and tightens up the nut, and I keep that next to the bike at all times so that I always remember to tighten it up before I go. Some people will also fit a tap to this, so some people can leave a little reminder of themselves just to switch the tap on. I think that's a little bit risky. You forget to the tap up and then you've got a dry engine and you've seized up your pride and joy. At the gas tank, some people will just leave a little bit of fuel in and they'll just keep turning the engine over. I personally like to do that. But the alternative to that is actually just drain all the fuel out. Just because modern fuels tend to attract water, so leaving fuel in all year round does provide a risk that you could get rusting in the bottom of the tank. So if you want to avoid that, it might be a good idea just to drain the whole system out and to leave it dry over winter, and then just refill it and away you go when the better weather comes. Okay, so what about the electrical system? Well, batteries do not like cold weather, so a really good idea is to put them onto a trickle charger and leave them charged up. And some people take them off and keep them indoors. That's not a bad idea. What I tend to do is I use a trickle charger and I have on all my bikes I've got a connector that I can connect a charger up to, so they can be charged on a regular basis just to keep them nice and warm, because they really do not like cold weather. The plates warp and then the batteries ruin. That's why occasionally in a car you come to it in a cold morning in the middle of winter and they just won't start. So what about control cables? just like everything else, they can dry out over winter and become rusty. And there's a really simple way to lube them up. You can buy expensive cable lube systems, but you don't need to do any of that. All you need is a poly bag and an elastic band, and I'll show you how that's done. So first things first, we're going to pick on the front brake cable in this instance. Let's undo the brake cable and remove it from the lever. Okay, so not forgetting of course, then we've got to slacken the brake cable a bit so we can remove the lever. Right, so that's the lever out. All we're going to do now, wiggle it to get the lever off. What I've got now is a 3-duct cable. So all we need for our specialist bit of equipment is a rubber band, poly bag, a pair of scissors and some oil. All you need to do, cut a corner off the bag like that, and then hopefully we can feed the bag over the top. I need to just make this a bit larger. There it goes. Feed the bag over the top of the cable and wrap it around. What you need to do now, get your trusty rubber band and wrap it around the base. Just seal it onto the cable. Good few turns, make it nice and tight. And then you can get it. Key. Just put a little bit of oil, doesn't need to be a lot. Any old oil will do, doesn't need to be any special oil. Pour it into the bag. That's almost too much really, you don't need a tiny bit. And then do whatever you need to do, or you fix it off the mirror or whatever. I've hung it from the ceiling. So just anything you've got to do just to suspend it so that the oil then will fall down through the cable. Leave it overnight and it's all lubed up and done. So obviously you can use the same technique to lube any of your control cables. If you do it for your throttle cable, obviously you need to remove the slide from the carburetor, or you're going to fill your carburetor full of oil, which probably wouldn't do it any harm, but would generate an awful lot of smoke the first time you fired the bike up, so it wouldn't be a great idea. So that's about it really. Just make sure you've got air in the tyres, everything's covered in oil, everything's kept nice and clean. Make sure you, before you put the bike on, it's nice and clean, isn't covered with mud or anything that's going to cause corrosion. Put some sort of cover on it, but nothing that's going to create condensation or damp, so something breathable. And it's a really good idea to do what we do and set up a dehumidifier of some sort in the area where you're going to store the bike. Bikes do not like condensation, and because they're metal they tend to attract it. And of course when there's condensation there's water, and where there's water there's going to be corrosion. So that's what we do to help our bikes over winter. I hope you find that useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. And of course, thanks for watching.